There are moments in history when the world seems to pause, when a silence far deeper than sound sweeps across nations, hearts, and generations. This week, that silence fell upon the global music community as the news of reggae icon Jimmy Cliff's passing broke, an announcement that carried the weight of an era coming to an end. From the shores of Jamaica to the bustling crowds of New York, from small Caribbean villages to international music festivals, millions felt the same sudden emptiness, as if one of the world's last great musical flames had quietly dimmed. Jimmy Cliff was not just an artist. He was a force of nature, a man whose voice carved pathways through decades of cultural evolution. And yet, the first words confirming his passing did not come from the media, the industry, or even fellow artists. They came from the woman who knew him most intimately, his wife. Latifa Chambers. Latifah's heartfelt message to the world struck like a wave of emotion, raw and unfiltered. In her statement, she spoke not only as the wife of a global music legend, but as a woman who had shared life, laughter, struggles, victories, and quiet moments with the man behind the fame. Her words carried the tenderness of a love story written in the shadows of extraordinary achievements, yet grounded in everyday humanity. She revealed the depth of her heartbreak with a grace that only someone truly intertwined with another soul can express. When she wrote that she had not lost a public figure, but the heartbeat of her home, fans felt the tear in her world, and the collective sorrow deepened. Videos began surfacing across social media of fans gathering in Kingston, lighting candles, singing his songs in trembling voices. People described the news as the wind leaving the island, the sky losing its color. A father of reggae, going home. Jimmy Cliff's death represents far more than the departure of a musician. It marks the passing of a cultural pillar. His music lived beyond radio waves. It lived in political movements, in spiritual awakenings, in the voices of youth seeking freedom. Songs like The Harder They Come, Many Rivers to Cross, and You Can Get It If You Really Want were not just hits, they were anthems of resilience. They became the soundtrack of independence movements, the heartbeat of Caribbean pride, and the guiding spirit for countless artists who followed in his footsteps. As the world began to process the news, tributes from musicians, activists, political leaders, and fans flooded in. But amidst all these voices, Latifa Chambers' tribute stood out in it because she was married to a legend, but because she captured the essence of the man he truly was. In the days leading up to the funeral, Jamaica transformed into a landscape of remembrance. Radio stations played Jimmy's songs nonstop, community centers hosted vigils, and murals began appearing in Kingston and Montego Bay. Fans of all ages, from elders who had danced to his vinyl records in the 70s, to teenagers discovering his music through streaming apps, felt the same loss. Jimmy had always been more than a celebrity. He was a symbol of hope, a messenger of courage. His passing created a void that words struggled to fill. The government of Jamaica announced that he would be given honors fitting of a national hero, and preparations began for what would become one of the largest musical farewells the island had seen in years. And through all of this, Latifah was the quiet yet powerful center. Reporters described her presence as dignified, serene, and deeply spiritual. She moved like someone carrying not only her own grief, but the grief of an entire world. That's why, when she decided to speak publicly, people listened with reverence. Her message painted a version of Jimmy that the public had never fully known. Man who laughed often, prayed deeply, loved fearlessly, and carried his responsibilities not as burdens, but as blessings. She reminded the world that behind every icon is a human being, and behind every great legacy is a heart that loved and was loved back. When the world loses a legend, the grief is shared by millions. But when a wife loses her husband, the grief becomes a private universe, one that cannot be measured by headlines or public tributes. In part 2 of this story, we shift our focus to the woman whose voice rose gently above the global mourning, Latifa Chambers, the wife of Jimmy Cliff, and the keeper of his truest self. Her tribute did not come from a place of fame, nor from a need for public attention. It came from a heart fractured yet brave, determined to honor the man she loved in the most dignified way possible. Latifah's message became the emotional centerpiece of the global narrative. When she finally spoke, her words carried the weight of countless memories, memories of shared dreams, quiet mornings, late-night conversations, and the subtle, everyday moments that the world never sees. She didn't just announce the passing of a music legend, she revealed the passing of the man who had shaped her life, her spirit, and her destiny. In her message, she wrote about how Jimmy Cliff brought light into every space he entered, how his voice wasn't just powerful on stage, but was equally gentle, comforting, and full of wisdom at home. She described him as a man who loved deeply, laughed easily, and prayed sincerely, a man who believed in humanity even when humanity struggled to believe in itself. As her tribute spread online, fans could feel that her pain wasn't staged or scripted, was real, raw, and undeniably human. She shared how Jimmy had always been more than a superstar. To her, he was a protector, a teacher, a soulmate, and a best friend. She spoke of how his presence could calm storms, how his smile could soften the hardest days, and how his spirit carried a warmth that felt almost divine. In describing his final moments, she chose her words with grace, saying that he left the world the same way he lived in it, with peace, humility, and love. Her heartfelt reflection made millions pause, breathe, and feel the magnitude of her loss, even if they had never met her personally. The world often sees artists as eternal beings, voices that never die, songs that never fade, images that remain frozen in time. But Latifah reminded everyone that behind the spotlight lived a man with real joys, real fears, and a heart capable of extraordinary kindness. She recalled how Jimmy would often talk about legacy, not in the sense of fame, but in the sense of whether he had touched lives, uplifted spirits, or helped someone feel seen in their darkest moments. She said that Jimmy believed music was not just entertainment, it was a form of healing, a spiritual bridge that connected people across cultures and generations. Hearing this from Latifah made the world appreciate Jimmy Cliff not only as a musician, but as a philosopher of life. In the days after her statement, thousands wrote messages of sympathy to her. People from Jamaica, Africa, the US, Europe, and Asia expressed gratitude for sharing her love story with the world. Many said that they felt closer to Jimmy Cliff through her words than they ever did through interviews or performances. Fans described her tribute as stunning, heart-shattering, and a love letter to a global icon. Her sincerity transcended cultural boundaries. She wasn't trying to impress. She was simply expressing her truth, and that authenticity left a lasting impact. Latifah's presence during the funeral preparations also reflected her deep strength. Despite carrying unimaginable grief, she carried herself with dignity. She oversaw arrangements, ensured that the ceremony honored Jimmy's cultural and spiritual values, and met with officials who wanted to pay national respects. Those who saw her in public described her as poised, graceful, and emotionally grounded, qualities that reflected not only her personality, but the profound influence Jimmy had on her life. She represented not just the wife of a legend, but the guardian of his legacy. Her tribute also revealed glimpses of Jimmy Cliff's personal life that the world rarely saw. She said he loved gardening, and that he found peace in planting seeds and watching them grow. He often told her that life was like a garden filled with seasons, lessons, and constant transformation. She also shared how he remained humble even after decades of global fame. He preferred simple meals, simple conversations, and simple joys. He believed in giving more than receiving, and he spent countless hours mentoring young musicians, encouraging them to stay true to their art. These intimate details gave fans around the world a deeper understanding of the man they had admired for decades. Latifah's words painted a picture of Jimmy that was both majestic and intimate, a man who rose from humble beginnings to become one of the greatest voices of reggae, yet never lost the innocence of his spirit. Her tribute became a healing moment for millions who were grieving, a reminder that love, when shared authentically, can console even the deepest sorrows. She stood not as a figure behind a legend, but as a partner who had walked alongside him through triumphs, challenges, and the sacred quietness of everyday life. Her message concluded with a line that many fans have echoed since he may have left this world, but his light will never leave my heart or the hearts of the people he touched. Those words captured the essence of both Jimmy Cliff's legacy and Latifah's unwavering love. Through her voice, the world was given a final, beautiful glimpse into the soul of a man whose music changed history. On through her courage, millions found the strength to say goodbye. As the sun rose over Jamaica on the morning of Jimmy Cliff's funeral, the island felt different, quieter, softer, heavy, with the kind of sadness that unites people in shared memory. From Kingston to Montego Bay, from St. Anne to Spanish Town. Thousands of fans prepared to attend the most significant farewell the reggae world had witnessed in decades. Streets that were usually loud with laughter, bargaining, music, and everyday life now carried a respectful hush. Even the ocean breeze felt gentler, as if the island itself understood it was about to say goodbye to one of its greatest sons. The funeral venue grew crowded long before the ceremony officially began. People arrived wearing colors that Jimmy often associated with hope: white, gold, and green. Many carried flowers, especially tropical blooms like hibiscus and orchids, which represented the vibrancy of his music and personality. Others held vinyl records, posters, or flags with his iconic image printed on them. For the younger generation, this was their chance to personally connect with a legend they'd only known through screens and headphones. For the older generation, it was a moment to honor a man whose music had walked with them through the journey of their own lives. As the crowds gathered, various bands softly played Jimmy's classic songs. Many rivers to cross echoed in the air with a haunting familiarity. People closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them, many unable to hold back their tears. His music had always been a source of strength, an announcement of resilience, a declaration of faith. Singing it on the day of his farewell felt like both a prayer and a promise. Government officials, celebrities, musicians, and spiritual leaders arrived one by one, each carrying their own memories of the man they had come to honor. Some had performed alongside Jimmy decades ago, recalling stories of his energy on stage and his discipline behind the scenes. Others spoke of him as a mentor, someone who always took time to guide younger artists, telling them to stay grounded, stay committed, and most importantly, stay true to their purpose. International artists who couldn't attend in person sent video tributes that were played on large screens outside the venue. Messages poured in from across the world, from Africa, Europe, the United States, and the wider Caribbean. What Jamaicans had always known, Jimmy Cliff did not belong to one nation alone. He belonged to the world. Inside the venue, the atmosphere was a powerful mix of reverence and celebration, a reflection of Jimmy's own spirit. His casket, adorned with national colors and surrounded by flowers, lay at the front. Many described it as a king's resting place, simple yet regal, dignified yet full of soul. For a legend who had touched millions, it was the perfect representation of his journey, rooted in humility, rising into greatness without losing the essence of where he came from. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for: Latifa Chambers' entrance. When she walked in, the entire venue rose to its feet. She moved slowly, gracefully, her hands clasped tightly as if holding onto the strength of his spirit. Dressed in elegant white, she looked both fragile and powerful, like a woman carrying the weight of immeasurable loss, yet standing firm for the man she loved. People whispered that she looked like light itself, walking through grief. Even before she spoke, her presence brought many to tears. The ceremony continued with heartfelt speeches from leaders and longtime friends. One of Jimmy's closest musical collaborators shared an emotional story about how Jimmy would always pray before going on stage, often saying, "Let the music heal someone today." Another described his ability to bring people together regardless of race, religion, or background. He was a bridge, he said, a living bridge made of rhythm, courage, and love. A spiritual leader spoke about Jimmy's deep faith and how his songs carried spiritual lessons that transcended any single belief system. "He sang for the soul of humanity," the leader declared. "That is why the world mourns him today." Throughout the ceremony, Latifah remained composed, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She held a small book in her hands, perhaps a collection of memories, messages, or private thoughts, and every few minutes she gently touched it, as though feeling Jimmy's presence through it. When the choir began singing "The Harder They Come," the audience joined in. Thousands of voices filled the space, lifting the roof with a unity that felt almost sacred. It was not just a song, it was a farewell chant, a collective tribute to a man who had taught them that no matter how hard life gets, the human spirit can rise and push forward.